Welcome to the first educational seminar for 2019. My name is Covington, Michael Knapp. This is actually a reboot of a presentation we did back in 2000 called Chipology. It's a basic introduction to chips, different designs, different styles, just to get people on the same kind of terms. Next year. Just sit down here. Okay. So again, just a little overview of everything we're going to talk about. Going through. Here's the first thing. Just a lot of basics for Chipology. Next chart. And again, if you have any questions, try to just at any time.
Richard, flower.
Thank you. Okay, so most people think of chips as little clay discs with some designs on it, stamps and so forth. Yet, this one says it's a token. The silver stripe says it's a gaming chip. So, that's adding to some of the confusion that people get when they're saying, well, hey, I collect chips, but this isn't a chip, it says it's a token. Next chart. Example of a standard gaming chip, the Valleys from a few years ago. The GDC token, everybody's kind of familiar with those. The colorized token and a premium token. And some of these will have numbers on them. It's not on any catalog, that's just my own numbering system and numbering system later. There's a bazillion of them. There's actually a committee on trying to standardize that, and it's been kind of entertaining. Next chart. So again, on some of the antique chips, we've got ivory. There's some bone chips that are in use. This is one of my favorite chips, mother of pearl. Just from the way it sheens, and when you hold it, it feels different. It just, yeah, it's a great little chip. And of course, a poker chip. The next chart shows some of the foreign chips or jet-ons. I don't know if a lot of people remember, but when Paris first opened up, they had a French roulette table, and they actually used some jet-ons. I was actually lucky enough to go there and talk to the pit boss. I bought some on the table, and it was just the pit boss actually said sell the guy whatever he wants. The actual dealer was like, no, you can have just these. And I started to say something, and Jim Serra said, don't push it. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Anyway, so, and then also we have plaques. Go ahead, Mike. The plaques, a lot of people like to collect them. I like to collect them. They're just fun to have. You see them in movies all the time. They're larger, they feel different. They have lunettes, which are the different colored inserts. And it's just, it's something we don't play with typically here in the States. And again, I'm kind of going kind of quick, so if anybody has any questions, let me know. Foreign chips, which actually, I got to slaughter. Can you pronounce that for me, Michael?
Bourgogne Grasset.
Thank you, what he said. They actually bought a lot of the manufacturers here in the States, so it's not necessarily just strictly foreign anymore. But again, the feel of the chip is different. It's more of a plastic injected mold type chip. They actually bought Chipco, I believe, and also bought Jones. True, Michael?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So again, they're getting into the more manufacturing. Go back to chip for a second. One thing about Chipcos, I don't know if everybody has actually observed this, but when you get a red background, don't put it against a white chip in your collection without anything between it, because the colors will run. I've ruined a few really good chips that way, and just didn't know about it until after it happened. So.
And don't put them in polyvinyl chloride flips.
Yes, the soft PVC plastic, because that helps to leach out colors. Where I work, I have a badge, and they gave us PVC holders. Well, I took my badge out, and all the colors have faded onto the badge. It looks like I'm a ghost now. It just anyway, yeah, sure. These are some of my favorite chips. The die-cut metal. Mason Company did the star inlay. Obviously, I like this chip because it's from Covington, Kentucky. Yeah, the die-cut metal is really nice. The horse is beautiful. Die-cut metal from the Mapes Club.
And he does since the 40s.
Yes, thank you for bringing that. For those that didn't hear, Michael was saying die-cut metals haven't been used since the 40s, so over 70 years. Brass core. You typically see the actual finished chip, which are these three chips. This is actually clear. plastics that you can actually see the brass base. Here's one that doesn't have the plastic on it, so you can actually see the construction of the ship. Again, these are kind of fun chips, metal inlays. So it's actually an inlay that goes into the chip, it's molded around it. So there's different styles, there's a scallop, there's a hex, there's a round that kind of looks like a scallop, and then the oval. Thanks. Crescent seals. Again, this kind of shows the construction. The chip was actually broken. I didn't break it, but I bought it because it shows how, when we put the chip into the bowl, put the inlay in, and then they press it, and it adheres to the chip. This is one of the more beautiful colored inlays. Again, different styles. So, actual paper inlays that have a cover over the top of it. You can actually see the matting of the press that they use where they insert it. That's also a way you can tell to see if someone had taken the inlay out and rotated it or put it onto a different chip to make an error. Just a few examples here. Some more showing the different types of designs of the actual inlay. A few more. Some hot stamps. Hot stamps are anywhere from gold, silver, blue, green, pick a color. And whether it's in clay or plastic, so the chip coat, you can kind of see the texture of the mold or on the chip, and when they hot stamped it, they actually brought out that detail. I think it's all. Go ahead. You get paper inlays in Deadwood when they first started having gaming. They had a basic chip, printed up some inlays, stuck them on there, put it on the floor. Some are, actually, the one that's shown there is pretty good condition, even though it looks kind of gnarly. Some of them have been peeled, you play with them, the paper gets kind of yucky, it just, so those don't typically last that long. Next. Okay, what colors do you see there? They're the same chip. You see a darker blue, and this one's actually faded a little bit. Whether it's due to the sun or if it's a color variation done by the manufacturer, don't really know. You kind of see some of the darker blue here, but it's a different shade than what's in the other chip. This is a TR King mold, called Small Crown. It's for a California club in Gardena. Next. Oops. Wow. Whatever. Anyway, let's go ahead. These are some manufacturer samples from Paulson. Same thing. They stamped the color on the chip, and yet you can see there's different colors. So when someone says, "Hey, I've got a complete set of Paulson colors," maybe not, because there's different variations of basically all the colors. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask you, so whenever they do the stamping on, isn't it sometimes not worth as much money if it's double stamped or over stamped?
It depends on the collector. Some of them like the pristine example. We'll wait. Okay, so some people like the pristine example where the hot stamp is nice and crisp. Other people that are weird, like myself, like others, so if it's double stamped. In fact, I've got an example later where actually I've got a chip where it was double stamped in the mold, so the rim design is double. So it really depends on the person's taste. From a value standpoint, I'll let one of the experts with the original chip rack answer that.
There's very little value to a double stamped chip. In fact, many people consider them to be floor sweepings. In other words, garbage chips.
And that's the floor for the manufacturer, not the casino floor.
Right.
So again, it depends on, people will collect everything.
Right.
So it just depends on the individual. I've got a slide later that shows a variation. People think I'm crazy, but it's a variant, and I collect those. So, yeah. these are actually kind of really, okay, I'm also in the molds, okay, I'm in everything, but this is what's called a half pie. So instead of putting a glob of clay into the mold that's all the same color, they actually put two pieces in. And when it presses, it's, I wish I had an example. You can kind of sort of see it's not exactly a straight line, but it does fill in, and so it's called a half mold, or half pie, excuse me. This is a quarter pie. So again, they take the same two colors, break it in half again, and set it in individually, press. This is a quarter pie with edge inserts, and this is an eighth pie, so even more pieces. Again, those typically aren't made anymore. Christine Jones, they have what's called a dovetail, but if you look at the chips, they're different because this is a yellow into red, this is red into yellow.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, there are people that collect both of them. Yeah, different reasons on stamp. So again, this is different examples of the plain hot stamp. The Langworthy was a manufacturer sample, but Jones actually did some with foil inlays as well as the paper inlays. Wait a minute. Again, more getting into the different designs. So these are all hat and cane, but they're different. Christine Jones, the cane or the hat is actually shiny. Bird Company, they're still deep, narrow cane, long. It may not be necessarily shiny. Paulson has a short cane version and then a long cane version. So if you see the length of the cane, it's actually different. Also, one of them actually has a reversed hat.
Yeah, you don't have that on here.
I don't have that on here. Okay, so next. So here's a little bit better close-up of the difference in the actual hat and cane. You can see this is deeper, it's shinier. This is deep. The cane design is similar but not quite the same. And then short cane and long cane from Paulson. So again, when you look at the chips, it's not necessarily just $5 chip from the Rio or a $5 chip from FGM. You can actually get into the different designs, color variations, edge inserts. So again, on the room designs, this is a backer style. Obviously, it shows that. But again, it's still a hat cane, but the hats are inverted. So the rim, instead of being rim of the hat, is here versus towards the center of the rim. Large graphic inlays, examples there, and then also the wide graphic. So it goes from a small center inlay, a little bit larger, a little bit larger. More molds, another one of my favorite. You get the idea. I like to clip everything, but that's true. You have the hot stamp, which is Paulson. I've actually got one where the hat cane is upside down, which is kind of cool. Die card, or die swirl, X-mold, and then what's called a house. House mold is kind of generic because each casino, if they have their name on it, that's the house mold for that casino. So it's not the same house mold for every casino.
And that X mold is the only chip known in Nevada that uses the X mold, the old Las Vegas Club chip.
C-suit. Again, you can kind of sort of see the letter C and then the different tips from the suits of the cards. Another popular mold are the arrow die. A lot of people use those. They're very desirable. Tri-ball, again, 3 balls, a bar, hot stamp. And this was kind of denoted as an oil can. You kind of sort of see, looks like the handle, the spout. A little bit different. Dot mold, heart, horse head right, horse head left. Again, some people without looking at it would say that's the same chip or same mold. It's not. Small Greek P, large Greek P. Both these are tier king, small crown, large crown. But Jones has the different types. This is the solid suits versus just the imprint of the suits. Die suit actually has 2 different flavors. I'll show that later. And then also the 4 suits. Getting back to construction again, shows that the basic inlay plus the finished chip with plastic. You can have the plain mold with ribs, if you want, or excuse me, ribs. Good. Nevada mold, what I had here, okay. Die-cast infused, which means pressed into the chip. Ewing mold, another mold that was, this is an old mold. And then the horseshoe by Benjamin. Chipco makes it a bazillion different types. Of course, the plaques, the standard house chips. A lot of people collect the octagonals. Again, because it's just kind of you don't see those very often. Chipco has two types of hot stamps: the unicorn and what's called Protect. Solid mold. This doesn't look as editorial there, and I don't mean to insult anybody, but this doesn't look as full, if that's a good word, or the descriptor of a regular hot stamp. It doesn't have the same crispness. It looks
Flat.
I didn't want to say that, but yeah, it just doesn't look the same. Let me just phrase it that way. Okay, edge inserts. You can get a bazillion different types of styles. Okay, how do you describe this? Well, this is 3/8 with a yellow with a 1/8 gray insert. These are side by side. These are just separate. So there's a million ways to describe the inserts as well. Same type of thing. You do it with plastic injected. You do it with clay. You've got the V-shaped inserts. You have moon-shaped inserts. These are actually 3 inserts, but you describe it with all 5. Or you say a split, whichever. Like I said, there's different types. Getting into hot stamps again. Large font, small font. So these are more apparent that they're different. More subtle is a vertical line in the cent sign versus, or excuse me, a large cent sign versus a smaller cent sign. This is what I was getting at earlier. So the Main Street, vertical bar in the center. This is slightly tilted. Again, people wouldn't necessarily see that or collect it as variation. Dunes have the skin color. Either no skin color or actually with the skin color. Here's what I was talking about earlier with the shape of the diamond. So if you look at the edge of the chip, you can see that if you rotate it so it's up, the left side is actually on top of the diamond, whereas this one, it's the right side that's on top. So again, 2 different styles of chips with the same chip. Palace Station, Las Vegas, Nevada. Sometimes there's a comma, sometimes a period, sometimes there's a space. It just depends on the chip. On the coin molds, sometimes it's all the way smooth, sometimes there's concentric rings. So again, there's 2 different styles of chips there. So again, here, also you can spell it Nevada. So what I was talking about, Las Vegas, Nevada, Las Vegas, Nevada spelled out. Sometimes with Newmark, Bud Jones, sometimes without. So it depends on how detailed or how crazy you want to get about your chip collecting. Believe me, you go wild when you try to collect all the variations like I do. And yes, even UV marks, which I'm into. There's different sizes hats. Sometimes it's just a hat, sometimes it's hat plus either the casino name or some executive's name on the chip. If you look at the chips that were made for the 4th and 5th convention, I designed those and my initials are on there, UV. Sorry. Also on the higher denominations, rather than the hat cane, they'll change it over to a Paulson. I've got one from Fort Queens that has Paulson on it on one side. You turn it over, it's Princess Cruise Line.
Really?
And in fact, when I was asking about it, I forgot his name. He was the finance guy at Fort Queens. He wanted me to send in the chip because he wanted to look at it. Like, no, I don't think so. So I actually then moved to Hard Rock, and at that time there was an area that had a room with black light. And so we went over the room and popped out of the case, showed it to him. His eyes just kind of, because he didn't think it was real, because he checked with Paulson. Paulson said, no, that can't happen. Well, here's the chip. If I didn't make it. And yes, he checked me out too. I talked to a lot of dealers. But it's just, you find stuff. Luxor has, there's a chart later showing the different designs, but they have different names on the the chip on both sides, which is the same thing. The style of the font of the logo can also be different. So here's the left chips. So again, and what I didn't show was it doesn't have any UV mark, and then there's some variations where these are on either side. This particular style is also matte finish as well as linen, thank you. So yes, you can go crazy. Another security feature of some chips are microdots. So you see this kind of like a dot here, you get this part of the design. Well, if you look at it under the microscope, it actually says pulse. And there's other things as well. Now, this chart actually talks about how the chip rack discusses how to read a chip design. So I took Michael Kearney's and Alan Meyer's work, pulled it out, and basically showed you from the description of the chip rack what features they're actually talking about. So they have their own unique number, the value code, which is how much the chip is worth, the denomination, the color, the mold. In this case, house has 4 edge inserts without an inlay, so it's a round inlay, green background, so that's why it's round and green. The color of the denomination. They have photos for some of the chips. In the Barbary Coast, you can actually find different years on the chips. And so you can actually build up a year set. I don't think they still do it, because obviously they're not in business anymore, but I forgot when they actually stopped. It was around 2000 and something. I'm sorry? Yes, exactly. Whether the logos on the uppers or reavers or both, the condition of the chip, the number of chips, there's a table, and obviously the date of the chip, which you can get here. And when people find the chips, they can actually say, okay, it's on the table such and such a date. So actually, go to the backup date before we go to questions. Keep that way. Keep going. So here's some more examples of the different types of microdots. And you can see, they're different. Kind of overlay. It's up to the manufacturer what they want to do for the security devices. Some of them have RFID tags, some of them have UV marks, some of them have a different flavor of marking that with certain frequency of light will show the security feature. And okay, so I was talking earlier about like the numbers that you saw in the presentation were mine. I haven't published it, and I don't intend to publish it because it's just how it's the state plus the number of chips for that particular region. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. Well, there's some excellent works by a lot of people, and what I did was just pull an example of a numbering system from each of these fine works and also on the next page. And now you can just kind of sort of see what the standards and archives committee is having such a entertaining time trying to come up with a universal numbering system. It's just huge. And how do you make it easy, understandable, adoptable? Because a lot of these people may not want to change their numbering system. Fine, that's good. Keep it. Do we have a cross-reference? Well, how do you cross-reference everything? Everybody. The print's going to be so small you can't even read it with a microscope. So it's been entertaining. Here's also some good links. I haven't checked them recently, since obviously this was done back in 2000.
Checkers doesn't exist anymore.
Okay, so we'll have to reboot this thing. So yeah. So any questions, comments, starts? Yes, sir.
You've given a very good presentation that shows the different types of styles of chip. Is there a website or someplace where a person can go to reference these in order to take and see a photo that says this here is a hat and cane or a small hat and cane?
I mean, the chip guide kind of sort of does that, but it doesn't, you can't sort on, okay, I want a long cane version, and it lists all the chips, or an example. You just have to kind of dig through.
The reason why I'm asking that is because
Right.
you got all different types of chips here, and then they can use, I don't remember the name of it, but it's one of the software packages.
Exactly.
And they got pulled on about that long.
Right. And again, this presentation didn't show all of the chip molds and variations, and because we can still be here tomorrow. And I don't want to bore you guys, but so no, it's a good point. I'm not aware of anything. Are you, Michael?
No.
I can add to that.
Okay.
If you go to the club website
Okay.
and, no, I'm sorry, not the club website, go to the chip guide.
Okay.
And the chip guide, over in the left menu, there is an item for, I believe it's called other references or other lists. And if you go to that, it will show a number of different lists that are available for various odd types of chips that are not part of the mainstream. And there is one list there, it's called Eisenstatt's mold reference or something like that. And he went through and cataloged every different type of mold that he had found. And it was done some years ago, but the only thing that's missing from it is some of the more modern molds, the newer things. But most everything else is there. It's got 116 different types, I think it is. And there's pictures of them, and he also has information on the manufacturers that he was able to find. And so that's
Good, thank you, because I run into the issue, well, this one here looks like this one here. You really don't know how to take the label from the top of it.
The Standards and Archives Committee is working on that very issue right now, standardizing mold design names throughout the house.
Okay, good, thank you.
Robert, you have a question?
What does RDIF look like?
I'm sorry?
RDIF?
Uh-huh.
What does it look like if you scan the chip?
If you scan it with a normal scanner, it will look like a regular chip. If you x-ray it, like I did in the Chipology 201, where I took some chips and x-rayed them, you'll see a structure. I have not x-rayed the RFID type chips yet. That's actually a good point, maybe I'll do that. Did I answer your question, sir?
Well, Win uses RDIF on their high value chips.
Right.
And they have a device in the cashier's cage that if you slide the chip over it, it lights up.
Correct.
So it's a passive device.
Correct. It is a passive, but it's just like the sensors that when you go to a store and you walk out and the alarms go wonky. It's a similar type of device. It's basically just an antenna structure with a small circuit in there. One of the Samoa, I think, the casino. I'm drawing a blank. Anyway, the one for the Red Rocks, thank you. They actually had a table that when you put that out there, the dealer saw who put out how much on a bag, so it would read your own stack. So, it's again trying to cut down on people switching chips out. So yeah, the technology is pushing forward. It does add a cost. So it really depends on the casino and what they want to do to help protect their value.
Hey, Dick.
Sir?
A few years ago at Comdex, I got a RFID chip from the Osborne Manufacturing Company that they did in a clear material, so you could see the circuit board in there. And basically what it looks like, it's about an 1/8 inch square, and it looks like it's just wrapped in wire.
Right. That's the antenna, right?
Yeah, and that's all that's in there.
I want to talk to you, sir.
I don't have it anymore.
I wanted to borrow it. Yes, sir.
Several years ago, I was in Monte Carlo, and they were trying to experiment with they had some new chips, just a very few limited high roller for roulette table. And they got kind of advanced notice to everybody, if you walk out of the casino with it, it would set off an alarm and they'd catch you, you know what I mean? So nobody tried to steal them. But they were real pretty chips they liked were, I think, when they first introduced Euro chips. And
Okay.
I haven't heard any more about it. Maybe it was a bad idea, or
It's gotta be a cost issue.
Cost too much, right?
It may, it depends on, you know, the manufacturer, you know, how cheap they can get the RFID structures, burying them in the chip, you know, to make sure that they work the way they're supposed to work, all those good things. So it may be just it was too expensive for the casino to continue, don't know. But I would like to have seen those, that was.
I did see them, but they looked like glass, but it had like a gold inside.
Wow, nice.
And, well, I obviously couldn't play because you had to sit in the chair, throw your chips. I didn't play, didn't have an opportunity to get my hands on one.
Sure.
I saw it, but that's it. And I haven't seen anything about it or anything since.
Right. No, that's a great point. Yes, Robert?
I was just going to say, sort of in regard to that, but for RFID chips, I know there is a security system that is sold, but it's for the back office. Basically, it's for dealers as they are exiting the building, so that dealers aren't pocketing chips and going out the back door with them.
Okay.
And so it's not for customers, but it's for dealers that might be trying to slip chips out the back door. So that does exist.
Sure, no, that's a very good point, thank you. Any other questions, comments, darts? Yes, sir.
I'm new, so this is really elementary, but when a casino takes a chip out of circulation, or they're not going to redeem them anymore because they put a new chip, do they sell the old ones to dealers?
No.
Okay, so if somebody's walking around with $1,000 chip, they kept $1,000 value chip to collect?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Okay.
Many years ago, there was a casino dealer down, or a casino owner downtown, that would pay the construction workers in chips. So it wasn't like they bought it, and it wasn't like they won it. They earned it, you know, they could cash it or they could walk. So there's various ways people can get the chips. But typically, when a chip is, I want to say demonetized, that's a U.S. Mint term, but they'll actually destroy the chip. They'll grind them up, they'll pour them in concrete, bury them someplace, burn them.
Really?
Exactly. Sometimes if they notch and drill them, then they'll sell them as souvenirs. In fact, in the presentation, you saw the one in the inlay chip, it was drilled. So yeah, people will collect them. I collect notches and overstamps and, yeah.
Usually if a chip is notched, it was notched by the manufacturer. A chip that's canceled by a casino will most often be drilled
Or hot stack.
or overstamped.
Overstamp, yes.
Some of the casinos in Lake Tahoe would go and drop the different chips into the lake.
Nice.
I might add this, I was in a casino in Wendover, Nevada, and they were changing the chips, and it had a small cage, and it was all so you could see in the cage because it was big, heavy wire. And the gaming people were there, and they had a shredder.
Sure.
And they were shredding all the chips. Well, the point I was making, they were changing chips to a temporary chip to play with, and all the pretty ones were ground up, but then all of a sudden, big, huge chunks of them came out. So how did they destroy the chips and then a big pile of chips come back out? I mean, I'm trying to understand, but I understand, but the gaming people were very particular about grinding them up to dust. I mean, you know,
and I'm sure that they were grinding the number of chips that the casino reported were in the cage at that time. It doesn't
but it doesn't mean you had something safe back there.
It could, or could be other areas people walk out with them. Who knows how the chips came out. You heard a story a few years ago about somebody having a box of, I want to say, 20th century club, but that may not be right. But anyway, they're using it as a doorstop in their house. Because some of the old-time casino owners, you know, when they closed up, they kept their chips. And gaming said, well, you can't have your license. And they said, oh, fine, I don't want it. So,
That happened with Bourbon Street.
Some people just go into casinos to the cage, like I have. I have a blackjack table in my house. I bought a whole rack
Sure.
of $2.50 chips.
Right.
It only cost me $250. So when that casino closes and they grind up those chips, I have 100 pristine chips that I got right out of the cage.
right. The Main Street Station 25 centers, I've got a box and a half of those that have never been seen table play. Just because I like, fractional, keys, I like everything, I got it. But, I like fractionals and, the hot stamps, I figured, fractionals might be run much longer. When was the last time you saw a 25-cent chip, a 12.5-cent chip?
Yeah.
10 cent, 5 cent, 50 cent, they're gone. Value hasn't gone up that much, but, key fight. Yeah, exactly. People do entertaining things. I played craps with my wife down at Casino Royale, 25-cent crap table. Okay, yes, it was a few years ago. My wife walked out with $60 up, I was $100 up, and I had 2 pockets full of chips. I mean, these pockets. It just. Bottom line is, basically collect what you like. Don't get in trouble for stealing roulettes. I know people do it. I don't do it anymore.
It's harvesting, not
Yeah, I might have done one. Maybe I don't remember. Don't quote me that. But again, the main point is, it's a fun hobby. Collect what you like. As you can see here, this is just touching the surface. There's a million different styles, molds, designs, denominations. How many have seen a 12.5-cent chip? 1 cent. Yeah, 1 cent chip. Yeah, exactly. You can find them. Sometimes it's more challenging, but that's the fun of the hunt. And that's really what the hobby is about, is have fun. Get a little bit of education so you can go understand what's a real chip, what's not a real chip, or token if it says chip on it, or token on it, whatever. And enjoy it. It's entertaining. Yes,
And don't tell your wife what you're spending on.
my wife is one thing into this hobby, but she still doesn't like it. So that's okay. So there aren't any other, oh yes, sir.
Follow up to my simple question then.
Yes, sir.
Is the horseshoe an exception to the rule of the casinos canceling the chips? Because there's a ton of high denomination horseshoe chips.
Those chips were taken out of the casino cage, out of a safe, by a Binion relative before they closed. And I think the reason he hasn't gotten into trouble with the Gaming Control Board is that he doesn't have a license. And Binion's doesn't have a license. The horseshoe doesn't have a license. Once they relinquish their license, Casino Control Board has no authority over them. And as I say, that's what happened to Bourbon Street. That was owned by Canadians, and when they closed, the casino control people said, well, you gotta grind up all your chips. They said, no. And they said, well, then you have to relinquish your license. And they said, okay, we don't intend to come back.
One thing that I did touch on this presentation, but we do on future ones, or ones that we've done in the past, is on the edge inserts and colors. In Nevada, you can't have the same base color plus edge inserts and designs in use in multiple casinos. Now, the problem is with the proliferation of gaming properties, you have California chips that look like Nevada chips. You've got Casino Queen in
East St. Louis.
Thank you, East St. Louis. Their 50-cent chip looked like a $1,000 chip over at the Orleans. In fact, the first year we had a convention over there, I went over and talked to the case manager, and I showed her the 50-cent chip, or excuse me, it was him, sorry. And he looked at it and said, I used to work there, I've never seen that chip before. And, you know, he didn't say anything about, or even acknowledge that it's the same color and edge inserts as their 1,000. But by the time our convention came, those were gone. So, you know, again, you know, each jurisdiction doesn't have jurisdiction over other areas. So, you know, how do you police that? Well, again, you have a finite color set, you have a finite edge insert style, colors, and patterns. And there's a bazillion casinos now. We'll keep bazillion. So again, that's another area that, you know, people can get into. So yeah, again, you know, bottom line, have fun, enjoy, learn. Knowledge is power. No question is too simple, or or whatever you would call it. Ask questions. Everyone here is more than willing, probably more so, to share their knowledge. And, you know, good luck walking away. wait. So yeah, no, again, you know, it's a fun hobby. I've been in it. Gosh, I got into it. Michael's actually when I got into the club way back in the Prodigy days. That was almost 30 years ago. And, you know, I still enjoy chips. So, any other questions, comments? Everyone hits the browser board?
So you have to do,
Yes.